It has nothing to do with protecting our elections and everything to do with federalizing voter suppression. The SAVE Act is nothing more than Jim Crow 2.0.
I think it is imperative that we remind the body and also remind our citizens that this is one of their ploys. They have a ploy that they're trying to pull off here, where their goal is to defund federal law enforcement, abolish ICE, and return to a wide open border. So the American people know what this is about. They also know that by a vast majority, 83% actually, including 71% of all Democrats, 83% of the American people think it is reasonable that if you go to the polls to vote, you show an ID.
Welcome back to MAGA News Central, your home for congressional hearing reactions, political analysis, and the stories that are driving the national conversation. If you believe Americans deserve secure elections, transparent government, and honest reporting, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the thousands of viewers who tune in every week. Now let's talk about the Senate clash that has Washington buzzing.
It has nothing to do with protecting our elections and everything to do with federalizing voter suppression. The SAVE Act is nothing more than Jim Crow 2.0. If the SAVE Act were to become law, online registration, registration by mail, and registration drives would become a thing of the past. If you're one of tens of millions of Americans who does not have access to your birth certificate, or if you're one of the 50% of Americans who don't have a passport, the SAVE Act could make it impossible for you to participate in elections. It would lead to massive purges that inevitably remove legitimate American citizens, legitimate citizens who have the right to vote, from voter rolls. And even married couples aren't spared from the SAVE Act. If you get married and you change your last name, you too would be at risk under the SAVE Act of getting booted off the voter rolls. This is just an outrageous piece of legislation. It's turning the clock back 100 years.
Now, the only way they can get to that is if they use the American people and TSA workers as pawns in their scheme and say, we're only going to fund them but not the rest of Homeland Security, because their goal is to defund federal law enforcement, to abolish ICE, and to return to an open border. But the American people are smart. They are watching, they are listening, and they see that what the Democrat Party has chosen to do with this continued shutdown, now more than a month, is to not fund FEMA. Of course, many people need emergency management assistance right now. They don't want to fund TSA. They're asking them to work without a paycheck. Same thing for the Secret Service. And by the way, same thing for Homeland Security investigations, who are going after drug dealers, pedophiles, predators, and a lot of bad actors that came in across our border during the Biden administration. So the American people know what this is about. They also know that by a vast majority, 83% actually, including 71% of all Democrats, 83% of the American people think it is reasonable that if you go to the polls to vote, you show an ID. They do this many times a day, and they think that that's common sense. You prove that you are who you are. If you go to the doctor's office, you're going to do that. When I go to the children's school to have lunch or pick them up, I show that ID. So of course, you should do that when you go to the polls and cast that ballot. In Tennessee, we have been rated #1 in election integrity. Mr. President, there's a reason for this. In Tennessee, you do a few simple things when you cast that vote. You show an ID. Our voter rolls are well maintained, and if you're going to register, you have to be a U.S. citizen. All common sense, all supported by 83% of the American people. You do that because you respect one person, one vote, and you want each and every vote to count. You do that because you respect the men and women who have put on the uniform and have fought to defend the freedom of this great nation so that you and I, each of our citizens, has the opportunity to go to the poll and cast that vote.
Marsha Blackburn took to the Senate floor with a message that resonated with many Americans. Election integrity matters. According to Blackburn, public confidence in elections depends on voters knowing that election laws are enforced, voter rolls are accurate, and only eligible citizens participate in federal elections. She pointed to polling showing broad support for voter ID requirements and argued that Americans already verify their identity for countless activities in daily life. Think about it. You need identification to board a plane. You need identification to open a bank account. You need identification for financial transactions and government services. So Blackburn asked a question that immediately put opponents on the defensive. If showing identification is considered normal for so many important activities, why should voting be treated differently? Her argument wasn't that voting should be harder. Her argument was that public trust depends on verification. And according to Blackburn, that's exactly what millions of Americans want. That brings us to the SAVE Act. The legislation would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Supporters say the proposal simply verifies something that federal law already requires, that only U.S. citizens can vote in federal elections. But Chuck Schumer strongly disagreed. In one of the most dramatic moments of the debate, Schumer described the legislation as Jim Crow 2.0. He argued that some Americans may not have immediate access to documents such as passports or birth certificates, and warned that the proposal could create registration difficulties for eligible voters. The comparison immediately sparked controversy. Supporters of the SAVE Act pushed back hard. They argued that requiring proof of citizenship is not voter suppression, it's voter verification. Their response was straightforward. The bill doesn't change who is eligible to vote. It seeks to verify eligibility before registration. For many supporters, that's not an extreme position. It's common sense. And that's why Schumer's criticism has become such a major flashpoint in this debate. Blackburn didn't stop at voter ID. She also highlighted Tennessee's election system as an example of what she considers successful election safeguards. According to Blackburn, voter identification requirements, citizenship verification procedures, and routine voter roll maintenance help strengthen confidence in election outcomes. And this is where the debate becomes bigger than one piece of legislation. It's really about trust. Trust in the system. Trust in the voter rolls. Trust in election results. Supporters argue that confidence in elections begins with knowing that the rules are being enforced consistently. They believe Americans should never have to question whether election safeguards are being taken seriously. Blackburn framed election security as a responsibility to future generations and a way of honoring those who fought to preserve American democracy. For her supporters, secure elections and voter participation aren't competing goals. They're goals that should work together. What we're witnessing isn't just a fight over the SAVE Act. It's a clash between two fundamentally different visions of election policy. One side argues that additional verification measures strengthen confidence in elections. The other argues that additional requirements could create obstacles for some eligible voters. Both sides claim they are protecting democracy, but they disagree sharply on how to do it. Blackburn's position is that verification builds trust. Schumer's position is that additional requirements risk limiting access, and that disagreement is unlikely to disappear anytime soon. In fact, as future elections approach, voter ID, proof of citizenship, election security, and voter access will remain at the center of the national conversation. The stakes are enormous because public confidence in elections affects every level of government, and that's why this debate has become one of the defining political battles in Washington. Before we get to the final takeaway, I want to hear from you. Do you agree with Marsha Blackburn that voter ID and proof of citizenship are common-sense election safeguards? Or do you agree with Chuck Schumer that the SAVE Act goes too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this coverage, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to MAGA News Central, and share this report with friends and family. Your support helps us continue bringing you the stories the political establishment doesn't want ignored. The showdown between Marsha Blackburn and Chuck Schumer highlights one of the biggest debates facing America today: election integrity, voter ID, proof of citizenship, public confidence in the democratic process. Blackburn argues that stronger verification standards are essential for maintaining trust in elections. Schumer argues that the SAVE Act could create unnecessary challenges for some voters, but one thing is certain: this debate is far from over. As Congress continues to battle over election policy, Americans will ultimately decide which vision they believe best protects the future of the Republic. We'll continue following every development right here on MAGA News Central. Thanks for watching. God bless you. God bless America. And we'll see you in the next one.